Good evening, everyone. Welcome tonight. Thank you for joining us for tonight's special film screening. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I'm Maggie Duane. I'm the Communications Director here at Defenders of Wildlife, as well as a member of the Environmental Film Festival in the nation's capital Advisory Council. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to members of both Defenders of Wildlife and the Film Festival who are joining us tonight. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our Native American attendees this evening. Now, as we get started, I would like to begin by acknowledging the lands of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway people, the first residents of the land that would become the District of Columbia, which is where we are streaming from today. Before we begin the screening, I'd like to share some quick housekeeping items. If you have any audio issues, we recommend clicking on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen and selecting a local audio player to your device. Also, if you have questions for our panelists during our discussion later in the hour, you can submit those via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So tonight, I am joined by some really outstanding individuals, and we'll hear from all of them in a short while, but I would like to introduce them at the top of the hour. We have Irvin Carlson of Blackfeet Nation, who is the director of the Blackfeet Nation Buffalo Program and president of the InterTribal Buffalo Council. Irvin is committed to the cultural buffalo herd and the Blackfeet Confederacy's Iinnii Initiative with the mission to protect Blackfeet culture, conserve traditional lands, and create a home for the buffalo. Troy Heinert of the Sicangu Lakota Nation is the executive director of the InterTribal Buffalo Council with the mission to restore buffalo to tribal lands for cultural and spiritual enhancement and preservation. Troy lives with his family on their ranch on the Rosebud Sioux Indian Reservation out in South Central South Dakota. Troy is a former two-term South Dakota Senate Democratic leader, as well as a professional rodeo pickup man. And lastly, we have Shami Anderson, who is a senior field representative to the Rockies and Plains program here at Defenders of Wildlife. Her work includes recovery of plains wildlife, including bison, Blackfoot ferrets, swift fox, as well as collaborating with conservation partners and state and federal agencies and tribes across the West. So thank you all for making the time to be here tonight. And Shami, a very happy birthday to you. Now, on to the film. Defenders of Wildlife commissioned this short 8-minute film to serve as a companion piece to the Hollywood feature Butcher's Crossing, which is out in theaters right now. Our goal was to showcase the present-day efforts of Native tribes to restore buffalo back to their lands. And now, without further ado, please enjoy the screening.
Buffalo, the Iinnii, they're a brother to us. Our lives are one and the same. My name is Irvin Carlson. I'm from the Blackfeet Reservation. I'm the director for the Blackfeet Buffalo Program.
What is Butcher Crossing? What's it about to you? What's the story about?
The story of Butcher's Crossing to me is about the devastation, not only to the buffalo, but to us as tribal people. Basically, our economy being taken away from us. We as a tribe, the Blackfeet, we've had a lot taken from us. Our land, our way of religion, our language. A big thing is our language. The buffalo, Iinnii in our Blackfeet language. Those were parts of our culture that was taken wasn't lost, it was taken. To me, the Iinnii of bringing them back is my way of contributing, of helping to return a big part of our culture that we have lost, and that's Buffalo.
And action.
Butcher's Crossing is the journey of a young, idealistic man in search of meaning and purpose in his life. And in that journey, he sees great beauty of nature, but he also sees how ambition can be both a powerful but incredibly destructive force. This is a movie about what happened to the American buffalo, and not too many places in America that have buffalo, and Montana was one of them, but more importantly, the Blackfeet tribe had this big herd. We felt that was the most ideal thing to do, was work with the Blackfeet tribe and working with them, using their buffalo. They've been such great collaborators and just great people. We've got a lot of our crew members working on the film that are part of the tribe, and it's just really meaningful because what happened to the buffalo is what happened to the native population, and it's so interconnected, and to not do that would be not right.
I think Butcher's Crossing, the movie, really lends itself to having that audience realize that this happened in the past. We've hopefully turned the corner, and we're making up for those atrocities of the past by helping tribes bring back their buffalo.
Miller is a product of a very specific moment in time in American history. My job as a film performer is to approach every character from a place of neutral and to be like a mirror that reflects whatever is happening currently in society and what has happened in history in the past. The thinking was that the Native Americans were living off the buffalo, kill the buffalo, therefore you kill the Native Americans. I saw Miller as a kind of a secret agent of that cause.
There's been a lot of very meaningful parts of this experience, but I'd say one of the most has been working with the Blackfeet tribe and the stunt men who live, on the reservation there, who also taught us how to do pretty much everything cool that we do in this movie. Was just an amazing learning experience.
Being able to film at home is awesome. I grew up there, I know where everything was at, being able to find the locations and just being able to hire all local stunt people that are from home, so everybody gets to go home at night, just like kind of a family unit, it felt like.
I find it very moving to be here. It's a great privilege to be here with the Blackfeet Indians too, that they welcome us, and then they can show us things, and they can teach us to understand things about these animals, buffalo, the horses, what's here, what's around us, what matters about this. I won't ever forget it.
Feel very moved by the relationship of our film working with the Blackfeet and telling the story of what happened at this really dark point in our history when the buffalo were decimated.
So films like Butcher's Crossing could really help people to actually see the devastation, and even shows, I guess, our history of the things that were done to us, the unjust things that were done to us as Indian people. And we're always on a long road to healing from all of the devastation that we've had to go through. Maybe it could help us with the healing that needs to happen with the feelings that we've had with all the devastation that's been put towards us. In the beginning, it was take their land, get rid of them buffalo, get rid of them Indians. That's still there. The many hurdles that we have to get over to try to make things better for our people. The discrimination, the racism. And so in everything that we're trying to do, we try to overcome those issues. And it always makes us feel like, well, you're down here and these other people are up here. So what day are we going to be on the same level, the same playing field level as everybody else, that our issues are just as important as everybody? And bringing back buffalo is very important to us. Once we started the Iinnii Initiative and the people seen, and we had dialogues with the elders and the young people, they seen the importance and realized the importance of what buffalo are to us as Indian people. Then all the support became stronger and behind that, where they want their buffalo back. Throughout all of the years that I've been doing things with buffalo, that all of those things that happen, all of the connections throughout the years, working with people, bringing people together, and even bringing us together right here. It wasn't me that made that happen. It was them buffalo that made all of that happen and made me really realize, the power and the spiritual connection of them animals.
Okay. Well, I am feeling hopeful and inspired, and I'm sure many of our guests tonight are as well. So why don't we jump right in to our Q&A? I think my first question is for Irvin, and that is if you could tell us a bit about the cultural significance of buffalo to Blackfeet Nation, and Blackfeet Nation, if I'm not mistaken, is on the border of Montana and Canada. Is that correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Yes. So if you don't mind just telling us a bit about the cultural the history, the significance of the buffalo with the Blackfeet people.
Well, just as I'd said earlier in the interviews in the movie, there is that they were a part of us in our beginning. They were everything to us. They were our survival, and they were our relatives. Right alongside of us, we lived the same, and so they were a big part of our culture. They're in our ceremonies, a big part of that, a very big part of that, and they were our existence. And we lived because of them. We survived because of them. So it's big. They right along with us, just along as with our other history of our language, our land, and all of those things that they're our way of religion. They're all a part of that. So that's how culturally, that a big part of our culture that was actually taken for a while. And now returning all of that, not only to my tribe, but to 83 other tribes, 84 other tribes that are with the InterTribal Buffalo Council.
That's outstanding. Shami, I wanted to see if you had anything that you wanted to also chime in with. You've had a lot of
Yeah.
experience and work with these tribes.
Yeah, and I'm just honored to be here with you all tonight and with Troy and Irvin, whom I've had a relationship with. It's about building relationships with Bringing Back Buffalo, and Defenders is really honored to be a partner in your efforts. Irvin, I think it was a few years ago, maybe at the early Iinnii, maybe 2017 or so, you and I were out there on the pasture looking at the buffalo, and you told me the story about the calf that made it back to Blackfeet lands after being away. Can you tell that story to the group here? That was so beautiful.
Well, it's a long story, but I can make it short, I guess. And not just one calf; it was calves. Well, in the late 1800s, there were some calves that were captured on the Blackfeet by a Pendray and also some of our people, and taken across the mountains to the Salish and Kootenai country, and a herd was started over there. And after that herd was became too big for the land they had to get rid of some and offered some to the U.S. government, and they didn't want them, so they sold them went to Canada, and they ended up at Elk Island National Park over by Edmonton, Alberta, and Edmonton, as far as up as Edmonton is, that was a part of the Blackfeet territory originally, the Blackfoot Confederacy. But anyway, those calves were there, or those animals ended up there. And so in 2008 and on down, we started the Iinnii Initiative, and we found out we wanted to return buffalo to free roaming along our mountain front, especially on the Chief Mountain area, which is a very spiritual area to us. So the story, we met with the superintendent of that park. He knew the story of origins of where these animals came from, and we visited with them, and so it was a big thing to bring them animals back to Blackfeet, and it was international news. We were there. We've done a lot of interviews with all of the international news and all those, and so we had done that, and then finally in 2016 we were ready to bring them animals back, and I wanted to bring them back, adult animals, and start the breeding program right away. But as you know, we had a lot of controversy with the Montana Department of Livestock. So I had to wait to see if they were okay to come and bring them animals in. But it became the state vet was out of his office for 2 weeks. And by the time he got back to me, those animals are gone. So just calves were left. And so that's what we ended up with, calves. And so we had all this interviews. On one of the last days that we were there, this film crew asked me to just stand out in this pen with these calves, and didn't have to say anything, just look at them. And I did. I got out there with those calves, and that's when it hit me, as I said earlier in the film here, that it hit me then that how spiritual and how strong that spirituality, how those animals, how powerful they were. Because it hit me right there that I'd been doing this for a lot of years. Been with ITBC a lot of years, been with my own tribe a lot of years, bringing buffalo back. And it hit me right there that all of these things that I had been doing, that I thought I was creating, doing these things, and it was and me thinking that it was me, and it wasn't. It was those animals. It was that buffalo. Those calves, they left here as calves. They left Blackfeet as calves. They went over there, and they wanted to return as calves back to their country. So they made that happen. I wanted adult animals, but they wanted to come back as calves and grow up back in their own country where they had came from. And that day, I just realized how powerful they were spiritually. Throughout the years, the thing I've done, met people, been places, and even to this day, it's them animals that are making that happen. And I'll say too is that them animals are. It's like they were. They were there all this time over there, and it's like they put themselves in storage for these years. And they were ready to come back, and they made that with us to be able to come back. Then they brought themselves out and came back. but they came back as calves the way they left here, and then to grow up back in their own country. So that just was a real awakening for me at that time of how powerful they are.
Wow. Thank you, Irvin. Well, I'd like to turn it to Troy next, actually, and this may perhaps relate a lot to what Irvin just described, and that is, Troy, if you don't mind, if you could tell us about what it means for tribal communities to again have buffalo, especially since they were gone on many tribal lands for nearly or more than 150 years.
Sure, and thank you for having me, and happy birthday, Shammy. So Irvin's right, and Irvin's been president of ITBC for many years. We've been in existence for 31, and we're up to 84 tribes. Now, I've been fortunate enough to be one of the truckers who gets to return those buffalo back. And Irvin's right in when you bring buffalo back to a community, what that means to that community, and the songs and the ceremonies that have been dormant, oftentimes for decades, and those songs and ceremonies come out, and you see the grandmas cry, and you see the kids smile. And I think about that a lot, because I think about those elders who have never had buffalo on their own lands. And when we unload buffalo, from this point on, there'll always be buffalo for those kids. And that's a huge it's a huge feeling of accomplishment or pride, knowing that you have one small part of the or piece of that. So there's no better job in the world.
Excellent. So Troy, you just mentioned the ITBC, and again, for our viewers, that is the InterTribal Buffalo Council, comprising of 84 tribes. This video that we just watched, we heard a bit about the Iinnii Initiative. Irvin, I was wondering if you could just describe that a little bit, and then I definitely want to get Shammy in here with a follow-up question. So yeah, Irvin, if you don't mind telling us first about the Iinnii Initiative.
Well, Iinnii is Blackfeet for buffalo. So the Iinnii Initiative was created to bring buffalo back to be able to free roam along our mountain front, and it was a collaboration between all of our tribes. We're the Blackfoot Confederacy. We have 3 tribes on the Canadian side, and we're on the U.S. side, but we're all one. And we had a lot of dialogue for many years before we were able to actually get those animals out to Chief Mountain. But the Iinnii Initiative was put together to make our people more aware of what the buffalo meant for them and how important they were to our culture, to us as Indian people. And the Iinnii Initiative created all of that awareness. There was times when I was, when I'd been, working the buffalo, with the buffalo there at the tribe for a lot of years, and actually working in other areas with the tribe. I also sat on our tribal council in that time, but I always stayed with ITBC during that time too. But the Iinnii Initiative was created to make that awareness and to be able to put them back on the land as free roaming along our mountain front, our lands there, and the Chief Mountain area. And then also in the future to be able to be transboundary, to be able to go over into Canada for our people on that side, and to be able to go back and forth freely, that they should there. There was a treaty that was supposed to be in place that we were able to do that as the Blackfoot Confederacy. That's an issue that we continually fight to make that adhere to that treaty. But these buffalo are I look at as being able to help in the future to make that happen again, to be uh, able to go back and forth um, across the medicine line, as we call it. And so the Iinnii Initiative was created to make all of that happen.
Well, thank you. I think freely was the most impactful word I took away from that. Thank you, Irvin. I'm so heartened to hear about this work. And now I'd like to ask Shami, if you don't mind, to tell us a bit about Defenders of Wildlife's work supporting these initiatives and others across the West for bison and buffalo recovery.
Yeah. Thank you, Maggie. And just to follow up with Irvin, with the Iinnii Initiative, Defenders has been a proud sponsor of that since its inception, and we are so honored to do so. And it's truly remarkable. I mean, Irvin being the Buffalo manager of the Blackfeet Nation and also president of the InterTribal Buffalo Council, with his two roles there, this has been a model with how to restore buffalo back to tribal lands and large landscapes. So, you know, it's the opportunity to help with the cultural herd, but recognizing that once we have this herd assembled in large enough numbers, we want to see them be able to have that migration corridor, as Irvin's describing, to access seasonal calving grounds, habitats within Glacier National Park and transboundary up into Alberta Lakes National Park. And Irvin has been such a leader with working with the federal partners and with NGOs to see this come to fruition as the Iinnii Initiative. So we're a proud sponsor with that. Our role is largely to support these Indigenous-led efforts on the ground. So as a field representative, I meet with Irvin. We look at parcels of land that the tribe, the council could consider bringing back under their ownership. Many reservations are checkerboard in nature. They still have like white cattle ranching operations. And so bringing lands back under tribal ownership by way of buffalo is really helpful to establishing corridors, migration corridors, and adequate habitat for large herds, of which the tribes are managing and can manage. So we come in and we help the tribes buy back land or acquire cattle grazing leases so they can have these buffalo as the key bovine, if you will, grazing and managed as wildlife. And then we also help with perimeter fencing. You know, we can connect all these landscapes and migration corridors, which is important, but ultimately, and we also need to work with adjacent landowners and make sure that there's wildlife and friendly fencing and bison perimeter fencing to avoid any conflicts and coexistence. Our work, you know, is largely just to let the public know on this call. We've got about 500,000 buffalo in America, the majority of which are managed for agriculture. There's about 40 to 50,000 animals that are managed as wildlife, as wild herds, more than half in tribal buffalo herds. Tribes are leading the effort in bringing back this our national mammal ecologically and culturally, because they're so important to the grasslands. The grasslands evolved with the bison evolved with the grasslands. And so again, we help tribes acquire their lands and do perimeter fencing. I just wanted to tell a story because Irvin and Troy have long taught me that it's not just about strategic planning and going and measuring, you know, for fencing. It's about really hearing and understanding the story and the relationship to this beautiful animal. And so a big part of our effort is to help move Yellowstone bison of really high genetics, you know, very little cattle introgression. They have big heads to withstand the cold winters, and the reproductive nature is very different. And so InterTribal Buffalo Council is instrumental. Fort Peck, we help move animals, defenders, from Yellowstone to Fort Peck tribes in Montana as a clearinghouse where they undergo final disease testing. And then ITBC helps move those animals across the country. And Troy can tell you more about that. But the one time that this is like early on in my job, I think I was like, I've been with Defenders for 7 years. And I think it was like the first year. And we had 57 bison bulls, Irvin, you might remember this, going to Fort Peck. and there were 15 horse trailers all traveling 500 miles. We went in a caravan all the way to Fort Peck with these bison bulls. And these are big animals, right? Big. And they all lined up together. And Robbie Magnum, the Buffalo manager there said, okay, we're going to open all the doors at the same time. And Johnny Bear Cub Stiff Arm had the elders there. We had drums and singers, and it was just magical. It was a beautiful day on the prairie. It was early summer, and Robbie said, okay, open the doors. And they opened the doors, and the music, the drummers and the singers, and it was just like all the animals came running out onto the prairie, thundering across the prairie, the bulls. And it was the best day of my career. I was dumbfounded. It was so beautiful to see these animals return to their native lands, and the tribes singing and so happy, and to know that we had a role in this as a partner. It was really awesome. So just wanted to tell a story, but yeah, I'm really honored to be with these two and to have incredible relationships with our tribes and to help bring them back to buffalo. So yeah.
Thank you, Shami. It's always exciting to connect with you in our day jobs and hear about the work that you're doing. So thank you for sharing that and for sharing the story. Troy, before we start getting into audience Q&A, because we do have a lot of questions, can you tell us a bit about the ITBC and what it is doing to help Indian communities restore buffalo, and what are some of those challenges? We've started to touch on them, but I'd love to hear a little bit more.
So, ITBC is made up of 84 tribes across 21 states. So we now range from Florida to Alaska and North Dakota to New Mexico. And our goal and our vision and mission is to restore buffalo back to Indian country for that cultural and spiritual connection. What it takes is working with tribes. We try to help tribes at whatever level they're at, whether that's a brand new tribe just getting started, or we're augmenting herds that have already existed many times for years. So we provide technical services, obviously the surplus program, herd development grants, and lots of communication and relationship building to make sure that those programs are successful. Some of the hurdles are what you've heard prior, access to land, infrastructure. Those things are all important to successful buffalo programs, especially the way tribes manage buffalo, managing them as the relative that they are, and as wildlife. So those are some of the hurdles. And obviously, all of those things require resources. So we try to get as much out as we can. But with the growth of ITBC, we're happy to take new tribes. But our funding pool hasn't increased either. So we do the best we can with what we have. And a little story on a upcoming Yellowstone transfer, and Shami doesn't even know this yet. The Peoria tribe of Oklahoma is a new tribe that hasn't had buffalo. They haven't had buffalo on their land since they were relocated from the Illinois territory. They have put in the work. It's been kind of a couple years in the making. We will be shipping them a family group this winter of Yellowstone buffalo from Fort Peck.
That is fantastic news and breaking news. We are hearing it here first. That is so exciting. Thank you, Troy. Okay, so I have one last question, and a lot of our audience members are actually asking this one. So before we get to all of our audience Q&As, I'm going to ask this one because a lot of us are curious how we can get involved. But more to that, I think seeing and then understanding the devastation that led to where the situation that we find ourselves in today, the gravity of history, it is difficult to face, but I think it's imperative we do, and it's how we learn. And Irvin, you mentioned something in the film, and that is that films like these maybe can help with the healing. And I'd love to know, beyond what people can do to be supportive, what more do you see as supporting the healing process?
Well, just as
as many people out there that are aware of what we are doing, and this here film really helps also. Um, and then providing support um, for returning buffalo back to our lands. And it's always been, you know, a dream, but never will come true. But we'd always wish that buffalo could roam the landscape freely, just as other wildlife. I don't know what the prejudice there is against them, but they're not able to be that. But if we just have the support of people mentioning it wherever they are, or even talking about the films of ITBC, and also we even have within the ITBC we do have a associate member part of the InterTribal Buffalo Council that people can join in support, and it's you know, of course they don't have to be tribal members. They can be people out there that are just supporting what we are doing, and that's the biggest thing that could really help with the tribes within the InterTribal Buffalo Council, um, and even talking to your congressional people. We do have the Indian Buffalo Management Act that we are trying to get passed, and even support for that. Um, that'll help stabilize tribal herds.
Great. Shami, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to what people can do. I do know that if folks would like to follow along with your updates, Shami, folks are also welcome to go to defenders.org/action. We're always keeping our members up to date with the latest. And that's defenders.org/action if folks would like to join.
Thanks,
Shami.
Maggie. Yeah, we're a proud sponsor, obviously, of all these programs and have an MOU with ITBC, but an associate member of ITBC is helpful. Troy was going to mention, or please, Troy, you came off mic. You maybe had some comments.
I just back to the healing question. I think when I heard this and it you know how you have those epiphanies, just like Irvin had, with those calves, and I heard this said once, and it said, first they came for our buffalo, then they came for our land, and then they came for our kids. And if you're from the communities like Irvin and I are from, when you see that, you can trace that back to some of the issues that we have in our communities. And so as we restore buffalo back and we reconnect with our culture and reconnect with those ceremonies and learn what the buffalo have to teach us, that's a healing in itself. And that's how we start to heal our own communities from within. And that's what it's going to take. So, buffalo, if we want to heal our communities, buffalo are essential to that effort.
Thank you so much, Troy. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, Maggie,
yes, Shami.
in terms of our, we do this because it's the right thing to do, right? I mean, there's no way we're going to make up for the atrocities of the past. Like Butcher's Crossing really shows that cinematic film shows the atrocities of the past. But we can do our part to help tribes bring back their buffalo and to build relationships. And that's what we're doing. And it's that important. And it's really, it's an honor, it's very much a respect for the buffalo and for these incredible leaders that we have on the call tonight, Irvin and Troy. Thank you.
Well said, Shami. Thank you. All right, so a couple of questions that we are getting in are about protections that buffalo have across states. Some guests are curious if they can be hunted or if it's illegal. So I'm wondering if Shami, perhaps you or any of our speakers might be able to speak to that.
I mean, I'm happy to. Tribes, sovereign nations, here's the thing: when buffalo are managed as wildlife compensatory value is what we call it as wildlife biologists. You know, you have these animals have a lot of babies. So hunting is an incredible tool to keep the population in check. But more importantly, you know, and Troy and Irving can speak to this, is the cultural value of those hunts on federal lands, or you know, federally. Wyoming has a hunt for buffalo coming out of Grand Teton, and it's incredibly lucrative. You know, it really helps their big game program for the state wildlife agency. Different states have classifications, either managed as agriculture. Some of them have dual classifications, agricultural and wildlife. So that dual classification allows for that wildlife benefit, which includes like a big game hunt. And it's important. But tribes, you know, again, Troy, please speak to the hunt, and you all have an incredible program with ITBC.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the tribe, how they manage their buffalo, what their goals of their program are. For the most part, you know, tribes use buffalo to heal their lands and to provide that cultural connection. Secondly, you know, tribes are starting to reconnect with that buffalo as a food source for their tribal members. You know, we know that grass-fed buffalo are healthier alternatives than you know, what is currently available. And I think the COVID pandemic really highlighted that when food was scarce, especially on these vast tribal lands that should not have food insecurity. And tribes have said, you know, we lived through that once. We're not going to do that again. And we're going to reconnect with this animal. And so ITBC steps in. You know, we built a cultural harvest trailer so that we can go to the site, go to the tribe, harvest that animal, you know, with grass in his mouth, and bring it back and have the community come help process that animal and distribute that meat to the tribal membership. You know, that's been another key thing to reconnection with buffalo.
We, of course, in states, I think that, and on federal lands, I don't think there is, you know, most of their, maybe the wildlife in there are protected, but some of the parks, when they do come out, such as Yellowstone in Montana, they allow some hunts there. But ITBC, we, of course, we lobby and we work to bring them animals out alive. And but at home, we built our herd large enough to start offering hunts to our own people, and that's a big part of our culture. That's returning of them to be able to harvest some animals for their family, and it's not freely. We have a lottery that and just so many animals a year that you put in for and are able to hunt. So it's really been, the people have really been appreciative of that, of being able to go out and hunt. We do have cultural harvests and for our school kids to bring them out, and it's something that they've never had been able to participate in their lives ever. Not only our school kids, but a lot of people that have not been able to do that for so many years. And they are there, the kids are there, and being able all to participate in harvest. And then we provide meat to our elders, our diabetics, people with all different types of diseases. We provide the meat for them, you know, buffalo being the healthiest meat you can eat. So, but those hunts, they're becoming, you know, that was a big part of our life, big part of our culture. So being able to provide those now on our lands is really been, I guess, a godsend, you know, to our people. That's to be able to come back and be able to do that and have enough animals to be able to, you know, start doing the things that was a part of our culture before. And then also using all of those parts for a lot of the ceremonies that weren't available before. and they were a big part of our ceremonies, and now we have that available for them.
Great, thank you. All right, let's try to get through a couple more questions and then we'll let everybody free for the evening. But first, I'd like to know, or a few of our guests would like to know, what is the current arrangement between Canada, the US, and Native tribes, and what's holding buffalo back from being able to roam freely?
You know, that's a real good question. Yeah, why? Why don't people want them to roam freely? You know, it's been a big dream of mine, to let them be wildlife. Like I said earlier, to be able to, go out and roam just as, other wildlife can. In Montana, one of the biggest thing scares there um, is a disease that they claim, causes cattle to abort, but there's never been one scientifically proven case. But also that disease came from cattle. So, um, so the other thing is the big ranching industry that is totally against these animals being out there. And that's why we're kind of one of the same, there's the animals that were put in Yellowstone were slaughtered in the beginning when they stepped out of there. Tribes were put on reservations. They weren't able to leave in our early beginning. In their own country, we weren't citizens in our own country in the beginning. So that's why we're all kind of, this confinement thing is almost the same as us tribes. But I would say the biggest hurdle is now that we've been fighting, even as ITBC throughout the years here, is having that conflict with cattle producers. And one of the things, and I had here in Montana, had attended a lot of meetings where these guys were against buffalo, and I went to those meetings. So at one meeting there, and they tried to make all these ideas about buffalo. One guy even called them predators, and I said, predators? How can buffalo be predators? But anyway, then finally he come out and he said, well, we don't want to lose our land. And I told him, I know the feeling.
Oh, thank you, Irvin. Well, let's shift gears a little bit because we have some folks also asking about species that also live alongside buffalo, such as prairie dogs. And Shami, I think you might be able to talk a little bit about your work, perhaps, in how some species that coexist with the buffalo also are recovering now.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, restoration of the species is ecologically and culturally for the tribes. Ecologically, and the tribes also acknowledge this big time, is their benefit to healthy grasslands. I mean, these animals, as they move as a herd, they graze in a mosaic pattern, which is really healthy for grasslands. They collect seeds in their hooves and transfer those seeds. They wallow, their wallowing behavior as they roll around. So here's a funny story. So the males, the males will urinate and then wallow in their urine, buffalo cologne, and stand up and shake for the females, right? And it's a mating thing. But that wallowing behavior creates depressions in the ground that fill with water for birds. Jason Valdez always calls it the buffalo bird, not a cowbird. But prairie dogs, yeah, prairie dogs prefer lands grazed by bison because they clip the forage down just enough where it comes back succulent and nutritious for other wildlife. And ironically, bison prefer lands where prairie dog towns are. I mean, they were out there when we had the 30 to 60 million buffalo. We had huge expanses of prairie dog habitat. The prairie dogs are not just a prey species. They provide underground burrowing activities that create this ecosystem habitat in and of itself that is really beneficial to endangered black-footed ferrets, which I work on. Many tribes are working to bring back ferrets in addition to buffalo. Tribes such as Fort Belknap, the Iinnii Nakota tribes, Crow, Northern Cheyenne. So tribes have been really instrumental with not only buffalo restoration, but other plains wildlife that depend on prairie dogs and swift fox as well, including lands at Blackfeet, Fort Belknap, Fort Peck. So yeah, it's all connected, and buffalo being a keystone species really makes that connection ecologically. It's very important for all those animals.
Thanks, Shammy. It's all connected. I think we are all connected is a really important takeaway from this evening. So I want to wind down and see if we can get any closing remarks from our three speakers. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. I know this amazing panel answered a lot of the questions on their own without us even asking them. If we did not get to your questions this evening, I'm so sorry, but tonight has been recorded and it will be made available. So to wind down this evening, I'm wondering if we could get some closing thoughts from each of you. Shammy, why don't we start with you and then we'll turn it over to the gentleman.
Yeah, no, just really honored and humbled to be working with these two gentlemen here as tribal partners and for 7 years now. And it's really been an amazing, humbling experience seeing you bring back your buffalo and under your leadership. And we're just really happy to be a partner. And thank you for being part of the discussion tonight. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys soon. So that's it.
Irvin, closing thoughts from you.
Well, I would just like to thank you guys for this evening. Being able to get this out there and get out to people and for support and support for the InterTribal Buffalo Council of returning buffalo back to our lands. And we would just like to, appreciate everybody that does, all of the partners that we've had throughout the years. We want to continue to, work with people and those that would want to work with ITBC to bring back buffalo. But to keep in mind that ITBC has been doing this for 31 years, but so they should, they're the leaders, they're tribes, and that's where people should take their lead from, is from those tribes that have been doing this for so many years. I know they have the interest, but I guess we know that buffalo even before this 31, years. It's been a lot of years, and I always use the adage of, now buffalo are pretty, and we were doing this even before, and now buffalo are popular. But ITBC was doing buffalo before buffalo were cool, so we're there, and just take the lead. Out let ITBC lead you along, take the lead, and learn from them.
Well said. Thank you, Irvin. And Troy.
Well, again, I thank everybody for joining us and inviting us tonight. Irvin has been in this game for a long time, and the Blackfeet Nation obviously are leaders in this effort. I think for the audience, if you want to follow along on the work that we're doing, ITBC does have social media. We do partner with defenders, and that is a very valued, great partnership. So I'm sure they probably cross post some of the things we're doing. You can also visit our website. We plan on highlighting these transfers out of Yellowstone, especially to Peoria, so people will be able to follow along. But this is the momentum that we're seeing right now has been a long time coming. And now I think we're all in the same boat, and we're trying to row the same direction, and having that be Indigenous led is extremely important. So just thank everybody. We look forward to the continued collaboration and bringing more buffalo back to more tribal people.
Thank you, Troy, and thank you, Irvin. Thank you, Shami, for joining us this evening. It was an absolute honor to speak with the three of you. Thank you, everyone who attended tonight. We are just so appreciative for your time and support throughout this really exciting initiative. And it doesn't stop here. So please stay tuned, and we'll all be able to work together to a better future. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie. Thank you both.
Yes,
Bye.
thanks, Shami.
Good to see you. Thank you.